Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about peace agreements that might be signed between Russia and Ukraine in the very near future. You know that everybody talk about truce, about some agreements, about drafts. Donald Trump stated that he will finish this war within the next 100 days. He started talking about oil, he wants to ruin the prices for oil. Russia saying that we don't see any movements in this direction because there are still lots of questions that must be resolved. Zelensky must create and carry out another president elections on the territory of Ukraine, and many other different things. And most likely parties, both the Russians, the Ukrainians, the Western countries, will not be able to make all these things during the next 100 days. Furthermore, the Russians all these days are going to continue their offensive operation, because to start this process first there should be like ceasefire for at least 100 days to have some time to complete all these things. But when talking about the main thing that nobody can accept is the forces. What kind of force will control this process, this truce between Russia and Ukraine? For example, the Russians are saying that, that peacekeepers who arrive in Ukraine without the consent of the Russian Federation will become a military target for the Russians. So the Russians are saying that we are not going to accept the presence of any troopers along the line of combat contact. The Ukrainians are saying completely opposite. Without troops along the line of combat contact, without the US forces, Western forces, European forces, we can't accept any peace, and we will continue until we get this as an agreement. The Russians are saying that we can't trust the Western countries because in 2015, when the Minsk agreement were signed, later the Western politicals, including the former Chancellor of Germany, stated that those peace agreements were just the papers. Nobody was planning to follow those agreements, and those agreements the Western countries used just in one purpose: to rearm Ukraine, to prepare Ukraine before bigger war. And now we see the consequences of this bigger war. The Ukrainians is about to be completely defeated. Ukraine suffered significant losses, and nobody knows what is going to be next. And furthermore, the Western countries are not planning to rebuild Ukraine after this war. So lots of questions, and this is also a very important topic. Who is going to rebuild Ukraine after the war? Russia. They will never do this without controlling the entire territory of Ukraine. They can rebuild Ukraine, but if they control Ukraine. The Western countries are not going to do this. Ukraine wants the peacekeepers along the line of combat contact, but the Russians are saying if there are peacekeepers, then Ukraine will do the same. Western countries will continue rearming Ukraine with the purpose to start another war in 10-30 years. But who knows what the situation Russia is going to face at the same period of time. Maybe Russia in the next 10 years will not be able to, to carry out another war. Nobody knows, and everybody wants to finish this situation right now and to live with this for hundreds of years, but not for tens of years. Today we got another very important statement made by the second person of Ukraine. The head of Ukraine presidential administration, Andriivka, has said that in reality there are no peace plans for settlement in 100 days. But another important statement was made by the Budanov, the head of Ukraine intelligence. He stated that Ukraine might cease to exist if serious negotiations do not take place by summer. And when talking about by summer, we are not talking about something that is going to happen in hundreds of years, and not something that is going to happen the next year. This is something that will happen in 2-3 months. Because in 2-3 months we will start seeing the processes that will lead to complete erase of Ukraine from the maps. So it's going to happen maybe even tomorrow. The situation is very difficult, but we see that currently nobody is ready for compromises. And this is very important. Russia will never go on compromises because they win. Basically, they're winning along the line of combat contact. They're advancing. They're about to enter the Dnipro region. And then the Russians will make more, demands for the peace process. When talking about the United States of America, we see that the US under the Trump's administration are doing everything they can to escape this conflict. They want to go to the line of combat contact. They want to go to border with Mexico. They're making a lot of statements that Zelensky is panicking, trying to insult him, trying to ruin the relations. We got reports that USAID has received an order to suspend all projects and expenses in Ukraine. We have a lot of things. We see that, furthermore, the United States of America is trying to normalize relations, not just Russia, but for example with Belarus. Today, the new US Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that Belarus has released a US citizen who was in custody. So which means that there is some good things in the relations between Russia, Belarus, and the United States of America. We see that now the processes are not to worsen the situation with Russia, the relations between Russia and the Western countries, but to normalize them. We see that there are more problems Europe is going to face under the Trump's administration. Lots of very interesting things, and probably the most important thing that is coming from the European Union. According to information we have, the European countries can't prolong sanctions against Russia because Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, blocked a statement from the European Union with a general condemnation of the election in Belarus, and he blocked the next pocket of sanctions. So this is very interesting. When talking about the situation on the ground, we see that the Russians are advancing, but we see that Ukrainians continue their preparation before probably final or the last offensive operation, which most likely is going to take place in the same area in the Kursk direction. For example, today, the Russian sources published the consequences of Ukrainian HIMARS attack deep inside the territory of Russia. In this video, we can see that most likely some temporary deployment point of the armed force of Russian Federation or some headquarters were destroyed as a result of a HIMARS strike, which is obviously not a step to stabilize the situation, but another small but escalation. Also, the Russians reported that Ukrainians tried to attack the Russia by bringing additional forces to the line of combat contact to the border, but those forces were discovered by the Russians and destroyed. And also, regarding truce and peace agreement, what the sides are going to do regarding the Sudzha direction, because Russia will not accept the safe of Ukrainian presence in this area. They will demand the Ukrainians to abandon these territories, but of course the Ukrainians will try to sell these territories as probably as much as possible, to get the bigger price as much as possible. So they will try maybe to exchange these territories for the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant or for something else, which will also not acceptable from the Russian side. As for the direction itself, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything that can give us information about the changes on the ground. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kupiansk area. During the previous 24 hours, the main activities took place in the vicinity of the city of Liman. The Russians brought a significant number of FPV drones with fiber optic, and they established certain control over these territories, and we see that despite the rumors and talks about the negotiations, the Russians are regrouping before further offensive operation in this area, because the Russians understand that most likely sooner or later the truce agreement will be signed, so that's why they need to take as much as possible. As for the Chasiv Yar direction, according to information we have, during the previous 24 hours the Russians managed to secure the forest to the south of the micro-district of Novy. This information was provided us by pro-Russian resources. As for now, without geolocations, different mappers have adjusted their maps in Russian favor. So this is the situation in this area. According to different sources, the Russians managed to take under control this forest, and we have added this contested area. Now let's discuss the situation in the city of Toretsk. The Russians during the previous days were attacking the Ukrainian forces in the mine of Toretsk, and we were counting days before the battle of the city of Toretsk finishes. But now we see that Ukrainians most likely managed to counterattack the Russian units here, and as a result of counteroffensive, the Ukrainians managed to restore control over the northern part of the city of Toretsk, including the Terikon of mine of number 12. In this video, we can see how a group of Ukrainian vehicles entering the northern part of the city of Toretsk. The Ukrainians landed infantry in this area, and the Ukrainians took under control several buildings and lots of prisoners of war. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map in Ukrainian favor. So this is the situation now, and now the Russians need to start everything from the beginning, at least in the northern part of the city of Toretsk. So we see that's most likely today or tomorrow the Russians will not announce about the ending of this battle. As for the city of Pokrovsk, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything special. Several sources reported that the Russians continue advancing in the western direction, trying to improve their positions between Udachne and the settlement of Kotlin, but as you can see, without any changes. Very interesting details are coming from Andriivka fortified area. Today, pro-Ukrainian sources published very interesting map. You see that there is an island of the Russian presence in the northeastern part of Andriivka. Then we see a huge gap, a significant gray zone, contested area, and then once again we can see Russian territories. So the Ukrainians are saying that the Russians managed to complete a very interesting and special operation, and the main purpose of this special operation was to answer T-0515 road, this part of Andriivka, to dig in deeper, to get deeper in this area, and to hold the lines until the main forces are moving behind them using the same road. So the main purpose of attack in this area just to hold the lines and to cut this territory from the main line from supply and support. Currently there are very heavy clashes, so let's wait and see what is going to be next. As for the settlement of Dachne, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything that can confirm additional progress on the ground. I'll remind you that several days ago, different sources reported that the Russians entered the settlement of Dachne from the north and from the south, but as you can see, for now, no changes on the ground. The settlement of Velika Novosilovka. The Russians continue celebrating their victory. We continue receiving different videos from different parts of the settlement, how the Russians raised the flag, announced about the victory. Indeed, the battle for Velika Novosilovka was very important. It's very important for the Russians. Now the Russians entered the operational space, and now they can develop their offensive operation further in the different directions. And the Ukrainians understand that maybe the main defense line collapsed, and maybe Ukrainians realized that they will not be able to stop the Russians anymore. And now the tempo and the territories taken by the Russians from day to day will just increase and increase and increase. And it's obviously time to begin negotiation process. Furthermore, during the previous night, the Russians attacked Ukraine with a significant number of drones, which can indicate that in the very near future, the Russians will launch massive missile strike over the entire territory of Ukraine in response to Ukraine attacks deep inside the territory of Russia with the Western weapons, and as a response to Ukraine attack on Russian oil and fuel facilities, also deep inside the territory of Russia. Anyway, the next days are going to be very interesting, so let's wait and see what is going to be next. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.